The 95-year-old woman with dementia that is fighting for her life after being tasered by a police officer at her nursing home in southern New South Wales. Joining me live now is People with Disability President Nicole Lee. Thanks for your time. We're conscious that we're about to hear from police. There's obviously an investigation ongoing, but what was your initial reaction when you read about the details of this story?
Just like anybody's would be, it's one of quite absolute shock and horror that this would happen to anybody, let alone somebody of the age of 95 who's suffering with dementia, that needs compassionate and measured responses, and not to actually be met with a response like this. In the use of tasers, she needed time, she needed empathy, she needed de-escalating. She certainly did not need tasers.
We, are always conscious of a story anytime a police officer uses, in this case, what's supposed to be non-lethal force, but we know tasers can be lethal and there's some pretty fraught situations. But the key word I think you mentioned there, de-escalation, and this must come up a lot with anyone with sort of, I suppose you've got dementia, you've also got a related sort of element of mental health, right? That it's about the best training you can get in de-escalation so that it doesn't come to some form of force. What do we know around how much that's changed in terms of police training over recent years? Because we're so much more aware of conditions and people's mindsets, but has training changed enough?
Well, I can't really comment on that without knowing, sort of what changes they've made to their training. But clearly, there needs to be something done. There needs to be some really dedicated training for police officers to de-escalate a situation and not go in and use force such as this, whether it's somebody with psychosis due to mental health, schizophrenia, autism, or dementia in aged care, such as this situation. Clearly there is a need for an update or to rehash or to overview of that training, and how are those officers supported to respond to that situation as best as possible. Clearly there is something missing here, and this isn't the first time where we've had heard of instances where people with, whether it's psychosis due to mental health, where police have responded in a way which has resulted in somebody losing their life due to that engagement. And like I said, these are people in distress and people in crisis, and they need measured responses, not violence or loss of life.
This story is getting a lot of headlines, and understandably. What's happening beneath the surface that perhaps isn't getting as many headlines? I mean, in terms of this sort of response to someone suffering some sort of episode, mental health, it might be dementia, whatever it might be, and how much that's happening now versus previously. Are there any stats on whether we're getting a better result than at least we used to on this?
Well, the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission released just recently the report of the use of restrictive practice in disability, residential supports, or in disability contexts, and that the instances of restrictive practice, restraint, whether that be chemical, physical, mechanical restraint of people, had actually increased. So clearly, there's something missing here in regards to frontline practitioners. Knowing how to de-escalate a situation versus always resorting to or having to resort to using restraints against somebody. It's a practice that needs to be abolished within our country. It's distressing. There's other ways in which to handle this, and clearly we're not quite getting there just yet, considering what's just happened yesterday, and also what's come out of the Quality and Safeguards Commission. This is in disability residential settings, mental health settings, and of course in aged care settings. So it's really quite concerning.
Yeah, there's always that conversation around better a taser than a gun, but is a taser sometimes being used too readily? Anyway, perhaps for another day. Nicole, thank you for your time today. When we come back...
Thank you.
Go quickly.
Oh, no, just,
Go quickly if you'd like.
The police really need to understand the gravity of a situation when having to use a taser, that they're not lethal, that they do come with consequences, and especially for somebody who is much older, falls risks for anybody. Like a broken hip for somebody at 95 could mean the difference between living and dying. So, it's to really understand that these come with consequences, that they might seem less lethal, but that's not always the case, and they need to be taken very seriously and only used in really extreme of circumstances.